very difficult to understand what is it that Crimson Desert is going to be. Mainly because the game is just trying to be everything. There's just too much in this game that it has come a point where we don't really know what is it that this game is, and how people has been comparing it to Skyrim, to Zelda, to like what really is this game. In this video I'm going to give you condensed information about the mechanics, although we are going to be rapid firing through a whole bunch of things, because I can tell you there's just way too much stuff in this game, and in the coming days we're going to be talking individually about these mechanics and everything that this game has to offer. Now, before we actually talk about anything and the mechanics and everything that the game is going to give you, I know that a lot of people are interested in the performance. How is this game going to be performing on the base consoles, on the Series S and Xbox and PlayStation Pro and things like that? This is the sheet for the performance in all of the several consoles that you have out there, and the resolutions, the display resolutions, and how the frame rate works. Now, if they're actually going to manage to maintain all of this stuff, it's going to be entirely dependent on platform. But it is also a good news that as many of you probably already know, Pearl Abyss went into Digital Foundry and they said, hey, here's the game, tested in every single little console out there, and so far they have had a very good review about everything. I'll just highlight the most important things as fast as I can possibly do for you. They've said that this performance is rock steady, at least in PlayStation 5, and there's just major dips in areas where there's a whole bunch of things happening, mainly like CPU bound places where you know that there's like battle sieges in this game. In those places the game can dip sometimes into the low 40s when you're playing on performance mode. Some people are concerned that that's going to be the case as well for the other consoles, but have in mind that the other consoles have a lower setting for ray tracing than what the PlayStation 5 Pro does, so that's something to have in mind. Anyways, this is just the sheet for the performance. Also, it's interesting to know that there's specifications for the Xbox ROG LEX, that it's going to have its own settings here. That's very interesting, because even though that the game is not going to be releasing for Nintendo Switch 2, this actually does raise the possibility for this game to be a Nintendo Switch 2, because we have seen so far that usually Nintendo Switch 2, with how the technology management is happening right now with the recent releases for games, it actually performs similar to the Xbox Series S, even though that I know that this Xbox Series S is a much more powerful, well, not much more powerful console, but it is a more powerful console than the Nintendo Switch 2's. Anyways, I thought that this was interesting because this does raise the possibility for us being able to see this game in the future on Nintendo Switch 2. But right now we're going to be talking in a more diluted way about what this game really is, or what is it that this game is going to give you. First and foremost, this game is being described by Pearl Abyss as a sandbox open world action adventure with light RPG elements. Now, if I had to compare this to something with my research that I've done and all of the mechanics that we're going to be discussing right now, it's some kind of like Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom on steroids, and I think that a lot of people have come to that conclusion as well because of how gliding and the stamina system that you have in all of the islands in the sky that have platforming and also puzzles and dungeon solvings, and some of the mechanics that do have you performing some things that you have in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Now, you can be like goofing around in the world, you can be riding dragons, you can be riding mechs, you can be gliding, you can be using your claw to just basically be Superman out there in the world. And yeah, I mean, this is just a huge sandbox where you can goof around with a whole bunch of mechanics, that to some extent I do have to say that I'm somewhat concerned, because when it comes to the story, talking a little bit about the story, the developers themselves have said several times that the story is not like the biggest slice of the cake in this game. Like, it's something that you have out there in the world, and it concerns me because I actually like the story in video games, and if this is just like an open world single player game where you're going to be able to goof around and just have the story as a side something, well, the exploration and the actual things around should really be good to keep us entertained with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours before we burn ourselves out. Now, if I'm going to be making a comparison on how different games, different titans have managed that, you have Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Elden Ring, Skyrim, basically all of the Elder Scrolls or Fallout games where the story is not like the major point, but you just want to be exploring the world. You don't play those games to finish the story because you just want to be exploring. Now, talking about the elements and what is it that you're going to be finding in this huge world, because certainly we don't want a world that's wide as an ocean and as deep as a puddle. So just talk about that. And first, let's actually talk about the characters, because there's no character creation and it has light RPG elements. You can, however, change your character's hair, your eyebrows, your beard, your tattoos at a barber, which is really cool. As you can see here, you can also change the color of your armor, but unfortunately there is no transmog system. You can just dye your armor and that's it. And that probably has something to do with the loot system, but also you have different characters now. The other characters, everything that we're going to be discussing about, all of the other characters have the same aspects and things from the main character, which is really cool, because as you can see here, you can customize your other characters, you can add armor to your other characters, and that's really cool, because they're not just like those extra side additions, something cool that you would be able to use based on how the combat system works in this game. It's amazing that they have the same level of detail and attention that the main character does, meaning that you can basically play those three characters roaming the world as you want to use them. And I was saying that this does not have a transmog system, and probably that has something to do with how the loot works. Loot, basically, you're going to be able to loot every the enemies drop loot and things like that. You can actually buy loot from anywhere that you go, but you can upgrade that loot, and that loot, there's also rarity in loot. I'm not entirely sure if you can basically take a random loot, increase its rarity, but you can definitely increase the loot power. So that's a little bit more similar to what you see in Zelda Breath of the Wild and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, where you can just find your loot out there in the world and then upgrade that loot, and that's going to be the same always because you can just upgrade it. The same thing happens with Elden Ring or the Souls games, where you can just find any mangy weapon that you would like in the world, you upgrade it to the maximum, and you can just keep using that specific something all throughout the game. However, it is interesting here because there's lots of activities. There's randomized loot here. There's several videos of people picking loot from enemies, so it will be interesting to see that because there's not like specific fixed loot. However, I do think that there is, because there's world bosses that you're going to be able to fight that are going to give you loot. And so we have three main characters. Cliff is our protagonist. Damian, it's an agile elf, and then we have Anka, which is a fighter orc. And like I mentioned, it is really cool that they basically have the same level of attention and detail, and you can basically, while you are roaming out in the world and while you're not doing like the main quest, which like I mentioned, main quest, I don't think that there's going to be much to see, and the cutscenes for quests and things like that, I don't think that there's going to be like a huge slice of the cake right in there. But that means that your character that you decide to use while exploration in the world are going to have the same level of attention and detail, because yes, each and every single character can be customized. They have their own armors, and you can customize the color of their armors and things like that. There's a skill upgrade system that you can respect whenever and however you want to, and each individual character has its own skill tree as well. So then again, you can basically explore this world while all of the focus has been on Cliff always. You can basically use any character to your leisure. Now that leads us to the combat system, which is very interesting because I've heard so much polarized opinions about this. little bit of background. All of the previews that are public right now, that are not under NDA, that are not under embargo, all of the official information that we have right now, it's from people that have attended to events. Probably there's many people playing the game right now, but the reviews are not out there yet. Now, with the information that we have right now, people have said that it's very clunky and it's very difficult to use the character, mainly because the previews that people have attended to is that you play a slice of the first main area of the game, like the tutorial and what have you, and then you jumped to a very amped up character on real late into the game. And the thing is that I would compare this to, for example, something like, I'm not saying that this is a combat system like Ninja Gaiden or DMC, but it's the same thing. Like, if you give the controller to a person that's just starting to play the game without combos, without purchasing any combos, it's going to be fun because there's not really much going on. As you progress into the game, you purchase more combos, you improve your weapons, you get so much more stuff to do. Then you have to memorize those combos, and everyone has a safe spot on what they want to do, where they want to do, and how they want to do with their combat. But I should also like to appeal to you, the viewer. Think of any of those games that I've been telling you about. You play them like a maniac for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. You leave for about 6 months, and then you come back after those 6 months and you have forgotten every single one of your combos. And you need to learn them again. That's why it's so difficult for the people that have been playing the previews to use so late game characters, because yes, you have the basic light attack and heavy attack and blocking, but also running animation changes one attack. You can run your animation into change one attack for something heavy that it is going to trigger a different combo. There's a huge plethora of combos and animations that you need to hone as you level up. That's what we need to learn to understand, and that's why people has been having such a difficult time with this game when they go to previews and they're handed over very amped up characters. On top of that, have in mind that there's a huge amount of plethora of weapons that you have in here that I have no doubt that each weapon is going to have its own combos and their own skill tree and how they're going to play. You have one-handed swords, you have dual-wielding swords, you have rifles, you have arrows, you have bows, you have halberds, you have axes, you have maces, you have two-handed swords. Like, you can see them right in here with the gameplay that there's just way too much stuff for 3 characters, for so many weapons, for so many combos. So it is only natural that if you hand the controller to someone that has not developed their combos yet and does not understand how is it that they manage to get those combos, it is going to be difficult. But also, it comes into mind as well that the game has no difficulty. The difficulty of the game is fixed, and it's also level based on areas. So while you're doing exploration, you can't really go to anywhere that you would want to go because you're going to feel underleveled. And if you are underleveled, then they're going to probably kick your ass. However, you can also overlevel your character, and that's if you go overlevel to a previous first starting area, you're going to be basically one-shotting everything. So this raises the question, if you have such an intricate combat system with so many subtleties that you have for button pressing and making combos and things like that, but also you have gear and loot system, how much is difficulty going to play a part in here? How much am I going to be incentivized to actually learning those combos instead of just mashing my basic attacks using my very powerful weapons? That's something, a balance that I'm hoping to see that they manage well, but that is a question that is left unanswered. Now, what about the content? What am I going to be doing in this world? I'm actually going to be rapid firing through the stuff that you're going to be able to do right in here because it's just too much. And if we deep dive into every single one of them, we're never going to end. Like I said, we're going to be talking about individually about these aspects in later videos. So you have fishing, you have mining for resources, you have harvesting materials, you can tame wild horses, you can train the horses, you can actually have horse racing, you have mini games as well, like arm wrestling or target shooting with your long-range weapons. There's also gambling-style games, rock, paper, scissors, like and those are actually embedded into side quests and side world activities that you are going to just find and encounter as you are traveling throughout the world. Some NPCs are going to give you targets, but also there's a criminality system that ties to the faction system. It is said that in this game, like, there's hundreds, I kid you not, there's hundreds of factions, and while you're out there in the world, you can be doing like bounties, and those bounties are probably going to be giving you very, very powerful gear. There's also world bosses, hidden world bosses, that has to do with exploration, because there's going to be hidden areas in this huge, immense and humongous worlds. So while exploration, you won't be looking for those enemies and those world bosses, and those are going to be the incentive to actually try to look for them so that you can get very, very powerful gear. There's a huge emphasis as well on puzzle solving, and the puzzle solving, like I mentioned, it looks kind of similar to what we see on this new trend for Zelda Breath of the Wild and many games that have followed after that, that you have several kind of like the main setting and or the main baseline for the architecture and the structure of the actual solving of the puzzles and how they look. And solving these puzzles is going to give you rewards for your character leveling, not only like the character leveling, but increasing your stamina, increasing your spirit, increasing your health and things like that. And this has also been said that the hidden world bosses that you can encounter, they're very, very difficult. So I'm guessing if we take them into like the late game activities or the special things that you have to do before you leave an area, then probably you want to be equipping yourself properly before you actually tackle into those challenges. And finally, let's talk about the base management, because this is something that you either hate it or you love it, but it is here, and it is no just that thing that it's going to, like, you can change how the base look. No, this is actually going to be huge. Now, I'd like to present to you my background for Black Desert, because yes, I did play Black Desert. Please don't play Black Desert, it's going to suck your life. I played it quite a lot back in the time, and I'd like to mention that in here because lots of the things that they're doing right in here, they draw from Black Desert. Naturally, that's the first game that they made, and this was originally intended to be an MMO as well, and later down the line they decided to make a single player experience for this, but a lot of the things that you can see here, they feel kind of MMO-ish. And the base managing system, it's not going to be that different, because here you have trade routes. Those trade routes are going to be dependent on the world economy and the actual trading of the goods, as you can see with this picture that I have for you right in here, on how is it that you send your wagons or your carts and things like that. And as a former Black Desert Online BDO player, I can tell you that in that game you could just spend like 6 hours fishing and establishing a trading route using the node system to get rich by selling your fishes and whatnot. And yeah, that would basically be your gameplay loot, like become a monopoly entrepreneur by just selling goods. And while I don't think that this is going to be as deep, I've also seen some people saying out there online that it's probably not going to be like you're just going to have your resources carried through the base, build some things and decorate things like that. I can assure you that that is not going to be the case. You can actually recruit people, send the people on missions. About the factions, which is the factions is a huge important aspect about this game. You have to maintain control of certain locations and situations. You can actively go there, or you can send your warriors from the gray main camps for those missions to actually capture things and such. You can do farming in here. For those for farming, you're going to be able to cook. You're going to be able to have alchemy. The alchemy is also going to allow you to produce dyes for your armors. So base managing is going to be huge in this game, and whether or not you want to engage with it, well, I'm hoping that this is something hugely optional, but there's a huge slice and chunk of the game that's going to be going deeply into base building. And like I said, we're going to talk in more detail on a specific video about that. But yeah, as you can see, it's a huge video because it's a huge game. I Believe you me, I try to condense the information as much as I could possibly do, and the purpose of this is to give you an overall idea of what is it that this game finally is that they're going to deliver to you in March 19. I'll see you there. Have a beautiful day, like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day, goodbye.